Hello and welcome to Live with Top Voices Unite. My name is Nikki Estes. I am the founder of Top Voices Unite and Emerging Voices Unite. I have brought today Satish here, and we are going to talk about something that's a little scary. As Bartolome Frey says, that we have been crying wolf for a while. AI is coming, AI is coming, and now we need to start thinking about the implications that it has with compliance and regulations. And this is something that I've never covered. And quite frankly, I've not studied enough. So this is why we've brought him on the show. He's the founder of Kintron AI. Satish, tell me a little bit about how this got started for you.
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks for the intro. So I was in my previous role, I was a liaison between some very $150 million lawsuit when the company was dealing with, and I closely worked with the legal operation and engineering team to gathering all the evidence. And that's when I firsthand witnessed the challenges around gathering of all the data and with changing the legal and compliance landscapes. And that's got me started with starting my own company, Kentron.ai.
Wow. When we're talking about AI, we're not talking about just ChatGPT or Canva. We're talking about lots of different programs that are out there. So tell us about which ones that you think would be most important for today for us to talk about.
So my today's theme for is that I'm going to assume that you are one of the either founder or you are working with a company who are operating in the legal tech and the compliance space. So the overall theme, what I noticed in the last 6-7 months of intense research on that this space is evolving, right? It's constantly evolving. EU has already drafted their EU AI Act, right? And that is going to serve the base framework for rest of the country to follow, right? There will be some modification here and there, but this is something is coming. So especially if you are operating into this legal tech and the compliance space, it's very important for you to always keep an eye on what is changing, what is happening in the space, because this is like evolving on pretty much daily basis. If you don't, as a result, the consequence would be that you might have put so much effort building the tech, right? And the new regulations comes in, and that will automatically put you in a lot of legal trouble because your product, the way you have built a product, does not comply. It's a violation of the some legal or statutory compliance.
So then this is really focused the technology as they're building it, those tech teams, but also those that are working as tech teams for the banking industry, the hospital, healthcare industry. I mean, this affects more than just like a tech startup that is building, right?
Correct. Yep.
Wow. Okay, well, let's dig in. You've prepared some slides for us to be able to walk through this so we have a visual representation. Let's start that where you can walk us through how to be able to go to market during this time of AI exploding.
Sure. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so let's first address the elephant in the room, ChatGPT, right? The growth has accelerated. Nobody can deny that we are in an era of technological breakthrough, right? What took Google 11 years to achieve, ChatGPT was able to achieve in less than 2 years. The number of overall users has increased like 5x as compared to what the Google did in last 11 years. Okay, so here's what you can see. The overall the growth of the model. Again, this is the last year data, but as you can see, where we were in 2017, right? We were barely just getting started versus where we are until the last year. The number of models, right, that's coming up with either the Google is coming up with a new model, Nvidia is coming up, Chinese company like Deepfake are coming up with a new model. So the growth of the models and innovation is accelerating pretty much on a daily basis. And as these growth escalate, the kind of innovations and the capability we will have, that's also accelerated with it, right? So what you were able to do in 2-3 years back with the bare minimum model, making some changes, have the base prompt. Now we are talking about leveraging these prompts for the automating the entire workflow of any organization. So that these models, right, brings that level of capability. So you need to be aware of that what is coming, right, what is changing on a daily basis into the models and what new capabilities are building. Also, with the rise of these kind of specialized model, you will see that company will leverage a foundational model like Gemini, ChatGPT, right? And on the top of it, they will also build their own, depending on what data set they have, they will build their own proprietary model. That's give them a lot of advantage, right? A competing advantage, because now they have specialized model which is trained on their own proprietary data, which is not available into the public market.
So before you go on to the next slide, we're looking at how fast it's growing and how many different models are coming out. Um, and we're also talking about the security aspect. Are there certain ones that we should be trusting as they grow? I mean, it's so fast.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So that's a great question, Nikki. I'm going to address that question to the next slide.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
All right. So with the growth of all these models, like every coin has a like two side, it also brings a lot of risk, right? And deepfake media, synthetic data, alter documents, is these are, and then also the fraud and crime, right? Abuse of all these models are another kind of a bad side of the ugly side of all these growth and then the innovation. And then you see a lot of companies and the regulations are also focused on that they wanted to make sure that these technology does not employ for the bad reason, right? It does not create more harm than the good. And the top like categories high level we can categorize into like where this is going wrong, right? Face swap is pretty much easily, you can take anybody's face and then just morph it with and create a completely new content. So that if the public is not aware of it, right, that hey, this might be a morph content, that they might get tricked into that the actual person is sending the message. There was a one incident last year when the bank CEO got on a call with the employee. He got the Zoom request, and in the middle of night, he was asked by the CEO to make a transfer. The next day morning, when the CEO logged in and then looked at all the books, he asked the employee, "Hey, what happened last night? Why? How did you make these large transaction?" And the employee was, "Hey, you were on a meeting. You asked me to, make this transaction, and based on your instruction, I made a transaction." And that's when they uncovered the entire session, like from the phone call, text messages, even the person who joined the Zoom, was all the fake, right? They were deceiving with somebody else. So now what happened is that because of these challenges, company, if you are building the solution, especially with the AI AML space, right, you need to make sure that you have enough check and balances to prevent these kind of incidents, right? Or have some form of a tech built in which will detect and help your buyers to identify these kind of threats.
Wow. The deep fake, that's becoming more popular, talked about. We've seen people get really screwed over by this. So, are you going to tell me now in the future slides about how we're going to avoid this?
Yep, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So in
Okay.
fact, this is becoming so prominent that in my next slide I'll say the DHS has started tracking, right, the entire history of the defect. So as you can see, this started from the first Obama from 2018. This is what the DHS has started tracking, and it goes all the way to like creating a deepfake for the Nancy Pelosi, giving the completely wrong speech, and then sending the completely wrong message. So you see that all the agency, they have started tracking all the evolution of the how the deepfake technology, right, and how this is impacting. In fact, in the last year election, you might have noticed that there was a lot of video surfacing of about President Trump sending completely different messages which he has never authorized.
Mhm.
And now that also the new regulations are coming up to fight this kind of deepfake medias. So especially if you're operating in the space, right, you have to be very mindful of that how your product or a technology can be misused. Okay, and you have to build all the bells and whistles. One of the case study I found is that one company is based in India. They are e-commerce platform, and what happened is that somehow somebody was able to upload pornographic video to the website, and that violated the like there was like a federal crime, and because of it, the CEO was put into the jail because of not building enough like bells and whistles in the platform. So now this is no longer is just going to be a civil penalty or a financial penalty, but countries are coming up with the regulation where this could be considered as a criminal offense.
Wow. So, you're not just in trouble of losing data. You're not in trouble of just losing money because you have a deep fake or you get compromised, but you're in trouble of jail time.
Correct. Yep. Along with all the reputational damage.
That's much bigger for the corporations. I mean, the smaller businesses, obviously they're going to have trouble. But if the bigger businesses are falling to this, wow. So, okay, I'm sure you're going to tell me how to be able to get through this, but give me a little bit more of the shadows. Tell me more about what else we should be looking out for the
Yeah.
for the
So
fraud.
if you go to the next slide. So there's again, like I just put it listed here. The last month, president passed a law, take it down. What it does is, it's now until now the state has a some form of law, right, which kind of make sure that all the tech companies are taking into the account of the deepfake and the media detection. But now that has made into the criminal offense. So there is a big regulation change happening at the federal level. So you have to be very mindful of that, what is coming. And that's why earlier, as I pointed out, if you're operating into the space, then you have to make sure that what new laws are coming, not just locally for the state law, but also the federal level and also the global level. If Because essentially what is happening around the world, it sooner or later will come here as well.
So is deep fake like, is this something to where only those would be affected if they've uploaded pictures of themselves, or if they're already like famous and there's videos or movies out there of them? I mean, how can just anybody be deep faked?
So the thing is that because of AI capabilities, that there are so many applications available online, right? You can just download any application on your mobile and swap it with anybody's face. You can make the static object to the moving, right? You can also create the synthetic data. Anybody can just go to the chat gpt and say, what, get me the driver license for California, create me some identity. And let's say you are opening a bank account, right, and you have to, as a part of the verification process, you need to provide identity. So now the bank has to make sure that documents they are receiving is 100% authentic. And I've seen some companies, it's a very challenging, right? And that's why you see a lot of crypto platforms and the banks, what they started asking for, along with the providing a documentation. Now you have to take the picture, right, with the document, and then you also record. Some are also like asking to record the video. You just like prove that this person is actual. And how they are going to verify that the video itself is correct. There are some companies who are going to so deep to detect these kind of things. Is that, let's say, for example, I'm saying, hey, I'm uploading this video from California, so they can detect my geolocation and the temperature and the weather particular in this particular geolocation, and then they will match with the geolocation the video has been uploaded. And if there's any mismatch, right, or of course the temperature of the room, the weather of the geolocation, that's how deep they are going in order to detect all these kind of fake media.
Mission
Right.
Impossible. This
Yep.
is that scene, right, where Tom Cruise is like climbing down and hanging from the ceiling, right, and his the sweat drop comes off of his glasses, right? To that extent.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's tough. It's tough, right? And that's why you see, because of these kind of challenges, the normal flow of what used to be relatively easy, right? It's going to be a little bit challenging, because now you have to provide a lot more evidence, a lot more data to prove that you are the person who you are saying, who are claiming to be.
So then these AI models, you mentioned earlier about using the driver's license. So you can use the AI models to like access it, like even if you're a normal person or if you have to have a whole lot of skill to be able to do that.
So there are a lot of prompts are coming up, right? Anybody with this basic prompting skill can just go and leverage any of these platform to generate the synthetic data. And I've been doing a lot of research around what is a common theme across all the regulations, right? Along with the privacy, security. So one requirement, what I've seen is pretty common across all the regulation, is that company needs a way to flag it and detect it if any content is AI generated. So soon we will see it online, like a Facebook or any other social media like a TikTok or LinkedIn. If your content is AI generated, then the company by law will be required to flag it. So this is how one way they can educate the user, and it'll be much easier for user to differentiate that what is 100% AI generated versus something authentic. And then see, it's a bigger change. Big tech company like billions and billions of records. Now it's every day they are coming up, and they have to proactively identify, verify, and also label it if it's AI generated content.
Wow. Okay, so then our founders and our corporate executives they're watching, like Michelle Hayward. Hey, thanks for coming. I really want to dig into like how we can be able to show that it's not just the US, it's not just other countries, like it's the whole world is being exposed to this, right?
Yep. Yes.
You have yes.
Yeah,
Gosh.
yeah, there you go. So there is this website for AI regulation, which on a daily basis monitor it. So like what new regulations are coming up in each country. So I would highly encourage that if you're operating in the space, then you also keep an eye on it, and then you see what is changing, right? What new regulations are coming up. As you can see, usually US, Europe, and the UK, they are at the top, right? They are coming up with the new regulations on some form of regulation changes on pretty much weekly basis. So having the visibility into like what is being changed, this will allow your organization to make sure that as you are building it, right, then you make sure that you have built all the processes and the tools in order to comply with the regulation. Because the last thing you want is not consider it, and then all of a sudden new regulation come in, and then you have to go, instead of investing a lot of time on developing the new products, on the features, you have to invest in building a framework and the process around it in order to comply with this kind of framework.
So we have a question here from Michelle. What are your thoughts here?
So if you go back to the next slide, so big universities like Stanford and Berkeley, what they are doing is they are actively assessing all the models and ranking them how they stack for each of the compliance. Okay. So what you can do here is that I'm assuming that pretty much every company is going to use some form of a foundational model, either ChatGPT or Google or NVIDIA, right? Then whatever you are building it, you make sure that first you run through all these kind of check and balances, and then see how your model essentially is like where it's falling in as far as that compliance goes, right? And this is a one way you can also gain a lot of trust from your customers that, hey, this is not just us, right, who are claiming it, but there is a third party who has verified and authorized, and then provide the like unbiased report about the model. So this gives a lot of trust to a customer about how your model is performing, and how your model is ranking as far as the compliance is concerned.
Wow. This is like a whole book all in itself. You could write a chapter for each one of these.
Yes, yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. And I was really surprised to find out that it not one of the highest ranking model, right, which is compliant. It's not any of the foundational model like OpenAI or the Google. In fact, I was surprised to find out that the model from the Hugging Face has highest ranking and most compliant.
That's wild. I'm looking here. So tell me about copyrighted data. What does that mean to
So what?
this?
Yeah. So now what happened is that if you understand like how the models are being created, essentially they've been trained on all the existing data. Okay. And then the kind of model has kind of memory where knowledge, where it can come up with a new content based on the existing content, right? Now the challenges around is you see that there is a lot of lawsuits also going on, because publishers are coming and saying, what, you guys did not get authorization from me, right? And you are just training your model, and then you are essentially making the buck out of it, and we get credit or not any kind of monetizing benefit. And because of that, what is happening is it's not only just a copyrighted content, but across the media as well. I know one company, they just used Jennifer. There was a popular singer voice, and then she filed a lawsuit into the court that claiming that, hey, you guys never took authorization from me to use my voice. And in last couple of weeks, what I noticed is that pretty much, like a Google and the ChatGPT, especially when you are doing the research work, they start citing the sources, right? Because that's where the entire SEO model is changing. So if you are doing the research about something, and then if you are leveraging ChatGPT, it's very important that you cite your source. Okay.
Hmm.
Also, another way to just to safeguard yourself, that proactively, if you are into the content media business, you can put this disclaimer that whether any of the ChatGPT or the open these kind of LLM platform were used to create all the content, so that you are not claiming the 100% kind of exclusivity on the content.
Okay. So then any data that we're seeing right now, not all of it has permission. Now it looks like ChatGPT that there were no circles filled in. So they took all the data, they put it up there, and there is no permissions for it. So do you think that those kind of lawsuits are going to increase?
Of course, definitely. And that's why you will notice, in fact, last couple of weeks, I started noticing that ChatGPT, in fact, now started sourcing all the data, like a Perplexity, right? If you use a Perplexity, the key difference with a Perplexity and the ChatGPT is that Perplexity is always cite the source from the
Hmm.
data from where the data is coming, and that adds its intelligence to just to summarize all the information it has gathered.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I remember when I got the paid subscription, then it started to give me links, and I thought that was such a cool upgrade, right? But really, it should have been the whole time. They should have been saying where they got that data.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So now the thing is that, company, those who doesn't do voluntarily, that some new regulation will enforce it and they have to do it mandatory.
Okay. Do you have any more comments on those? Because what I'm curious about next is how we're going to be able to manage it. I'm waiting for you to tell me to because this is a little scary that we have all of this ahead of us.
So I have covered in one of the slides, right? What I did is I identified what are the core tenant for the regulations, right? So this is the framework, core tenant I have extracted from the EU regulation. Okay. So what happened is that now if you're building the company, you need to make sure that you are addressing all the core tenants in terms of transparency, right? You need to able to answer your question that, hey, what data model has saw, on what data it has been trained on, who has access to it, and then you should be also able to produce the audit log of how you trained the model, right? Have you considered any kind of biases or any kind of prejudice against? So all these things you have to consider and should be able to come up with a valid justification and evidence that you have taken, right, all these co-tenant into the account while building your applications. Especially if you are operating in the, let's say that you are operating in the social media, and then you have to make sure that you have not built up or trained a model which is biased or has some sort of racism built into it, right? Because if you are trained knowingly or unknowingly on the data, then automatically the outcome will be right based on what you have trained. So one way you can safeguard your company is by making sure you closely work with your engineering, legal operation, and compliance teams, and make sure that you have all this information handily available before even you rolling out your application to the public. Okay, because sooner or later, forget about even the regulations. When they start enforcing, your customer may ask, right, hey, you tell us how you have trained the model, right? What kind of safeguard you have put into the place where our data is not being used to train your model, right? Because imagine that you are serving the two companies who are competing with each other, and you train your model on one of the competitor, and then another competitor start getting some advantage and have some kind of insider information because you trained the data on one of the competitor. That's the last thing you want, right?
Hmm.
Another challenge is you see with the chat gpt is, especially in the organization, what I see is last year chat gpt has rolled out apis for enterprise, right, for legal and compliance. So what happened is, there was a very interesting case study around it, that now because every employee is using chat gpt and all these platforms, they are essentially building all the knowledge, right, and built in into the chat gpt,
Hmm.
all the custom prompts which employee has built in, right? And the last thing you want when this person leaves, to take all the prompts and all the knowledge he has built in, because now that's your ip. So how you are going to protect it? Okay, how you make sure that if you are into some sort of legal litigation or the lawsuit, you can produce all those as an evidence. And that's why I see ChatGPT has, they already roll out their legal and compliance apis. So what you can do is you can simply ask your employee workforce that, hey, when you are using these llms, are you you are have you are you signed in using your corporate account, your personal account, right? If they are saying, hey, I've just logged into a personal account, that means all the data is not being tracked. And you are not only losing just all the IP and the knowledge, but also, God forbid, if you get into some sort of legal trouble, you will not be able to produce it. And that will create a more trouble for you. So one way you can enforce it is that make sure that whoever is using all these LLMs in your organization, inside your organization, they always use the enterprise version and logged in, use their corporate account. And because that also gives a lot of safeguard, right? You can continuously monitor it, who is asking what kind of questions, also early detect any kind of pii information or pci information. The last thing you want is somebody, let's say some engineer working on complex business plan or financial sheet, just expose an entire financial information to ChatGPT, and then later on next day you see entire world is knowing about your finance.
Mm-hmm.
That in fact happened with the Samsung. One of the core engineer was working on one of the project. He was in rush, and he, instead of trying to fix the problem himself, he just took the entire code base and uploaded the ChatGPT. And the next thing we know, that everybody found out about what kind of secret project they work on. And because of this reason, Amazon has asked all the employees, they literally block the uses of ChatGPT. Yep.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So unless you have safeguard built in, right? Yes, these are very good tool to speed up a lot of development and increase your productivity by 10x. But there is also a downside of it.
Sure. So it's almost like before we had all these tools, is that plagiarism, right, was a big deal. You couldn't go and take this chunk from this one and not be able to cite it. You had to tell where all of your information came from. So then why? Why are the tools that we already have on us right now, why aren't they good enough? Like I think, what is it? Copilot helps you to navigate through Teams, what's going on within your organization using Microsoft Teams. Why isn't that good enough? Like, what can we do?
So I'm glad you brought up this example. Not sure if you saw it, but there was a recent report for the Copilot where one organization has implemented across the organization. And
Mhm.
now what happened is that that's why these tools are very, I mean, these are very important and beneficial tool. But if while at the time of implementation, if you do not have enough safeguard, then it might backfire. So what happened with this Copilot, since it doesn't, if you have especially while the deployment doesn't take into the permission into the account, what had happened is that one company, they just deployed across the organization, and all of a sudden whenever you ask that question to the Copilot, it was able to answer it from the information where you should not be having access, like financial information, PI information, and they had to shut it down immediately. So so that's why while at the time of implementation, you make sure that you have all the proper permissions, governance, oversight, audit has taken into the account before you start rolling out across the organization.
Wow.
This is another example of that you always be ready with from the day one for the audit ready, right? As I said earlier, that your customer will definitely ask you all these questions like, hey, tell me about the model, what KPI calls is made, what is going on behind the how it made, also about how many tokens is burned. So the third point is very important because you will notice that a lot of SaaS companies are changing their pricing model. It's no longer about the number of subscription you buy, the number of users you have, the number of products or the features, but now it's all come down to the number of tokens. Okay. So the way it works is that every time you ask the question to any of the model, that question get translated into the tokens, right? And now ChatGPT, all these foundational model, the pricing model works around the number of tokens. Okay. So why this is important? Because let's say you have poorly built your model, right, or poorly built your prompt, and companies are also coming up with the on-prem deployment. That means I can buy the product, I can deploy on my own infrastructure and start using it.
Hmm.
As a consequence, what happens is that if you have not properly built all these prompt and does not have account for the how many tokens it's going to use, right, that shoot up my cost of the infrastructure exponentially. Okay.
Okay.
Imagine that if I'm asking the simple question that, hey, tell me the history about the United States, and it just goes out and retrieve the last 300 years of worth of history, how much it has actually cost me just to gather the information. Okay. So that's why your customer will ask you that how you have developed the this entire prompt, and also the tokens, right, how many tokens it is consuming for each and every kind of request. Also, if there is any way they can put some sort of governance and safeguard around that any of your query exceed more than certain tokens, right, then either block it or require some sort of second level approval. That's how you can monitor your cost of, and then make sure that if none of your employee go rogue and start asking all these kind of big questions to your existing LMN, and last thing, you at the end of the month you get a like $1 million bill from the ChatGPT and realize how big trouble you are in.
I'll pause you there because, I'm a creator. So I'm not creating any kind of technology and not using a whole bunch of tokens. But for the very first time, ChatGPT the other day told me, all right, you've used your amount of images for the day.
Yep.
I didn't realize that that was even a thing. So how do you learn about how many tokens that you even have access to?
So token mainly applies to, especially when you are building in a custom application, right? You are prompting it. You can just go to the ChatGPT has a token price website, right? Where you can just Google it, hey, ChatGPT token price, where you put, hey, I am, let's say if I am processing this one particular paragraph, right? How many tokens it is going to require and what is going to be the cost for processing. So, Nikki, especially in your case, when you start, especially when you are on a consumer site, you are right, you are consuming right now the content or you are leveraging for individual use. But once you build a solution where your customer is going to use it, and if they are going to leverage their own subscription, like ChatGPT subscription, and pay for it for the tokens, it's become very important, right? That how efficiently they have built a solution to use less number of tokens, or what kind of technological breakthrough they have baked in. So it's reduced the number of tokens it's leveraging, because that has a direct correlation with the cost of utilizing that product and platform.
I had no idea. I'm gonna have to ask it how many tokens I use now when I'm doing my prompts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, founders are looking at now that kind of cost. They're looking at the security they need to watch out for. What's the next thing that they need to be looking out for?
So go back to the next slide. So this is another prompt is another point here around is that because of chat GPT, your code is no longer your mode, right? The application you are building is no longer your mode, but your go-to marketing strategy is. So along with it, the reason I pointed out that point is that you need to build your application in such a way so that if the tomorrow new regulation comes in, you should be able to quickly swap your code to comply with the new regulation. So for instance, if you have built, let's say, application targeting for the US market, right? And if the new regulation and you want to expand it to Europe or globally, you have to have these kind of mechanism built in, but you can easily take the existing code and deploy it to the Europe and still make sure that that complies with the local laws and regulations. So you need to have that flexibility, and then that also gives you a lot of competitive advantage. And that's why there's a premium, right, to build this kind of a product and service where
Mhm.
you can easily comply with the new regulation. Now imagine that you have just built some wrapper around ChatGPT, right? You have built some application where it just goes out to the ChatGPT, get all the data, and you have built a nice UI which is 100% depend on ChatGPT. Okay, so if the new regulation come in, you will not be able to quickly move your application to which comply with the another geolocation. Okay, so that's why this is one of the mode you can create is making sure the way how you build your application from the ground up. Okay,
Mhm.
which only not only consider the current scenario, but also the future flexibility deploying the globally.
I'm reading this and I'm thinking about how we can feel like we're in a room by ourselves asking questions. So your LLM can be the one that's telling you things and you don't feel stupid because they'll tell you anything, right? You can ask ChatGPT anything and it'll tell you, but it looks like there's a line that you cross. There's certain things you shouldn't know, like the privacy regulations that we're talking about here, legalities of it. Like you should
Mhm.
not be asking about the financials of your company, right? So
Correct.
that's what we're getting into trouble for, is because that information is being asked or is being uploaded and then disseminated into data that we shouldn't be seeing.
Correct. And that's why it's become very important that when you roll out or leverage these products, especially for your inside the organization, you have a governance built into it, right?
Mhm.
So you can actively, like any other product and service, you are actually monitoring on that how these platforms being used, what questions your employees are asking, and proactively detecting, identifying, and flagging for the review.
Mhm. So you have fines that could be coming, jail time that could be coming. It's the cost of all of that is a something that we're going to face eventually when they figure out all the different tools to help us to keep compliance, right?
Yep.
Okay. So then we're looking at healthcare. We know how serious that is because of HIPAA, right? We need to make sure that the data of the person is kept. We know with finance, you're supposed to be keeping all of their financial data, their bank account, their social security number. But what other industries are you seeing that are facing this challenge?
So legal tech is another big industry I see is facing the challenge, right? Yep. Yeah, because what has happened is there was one case in I think in the New York where one lawyer, he drafted this entire strategy to fight, one of the case, and he just leveraged a ChatGPT. ChatGPT just hallucinated and made up one case, which was actually not a case. It was just a made up case, and he cite based on what the information he got from ChatGPT, he cited as in source. And when the defendant find out, hey, this is just a made up case, not only a judge dismissed the entire case, but also revoked the license of the lawyer. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So now he doesn't have a job.
Yes. So,
So
so, so you have to be very careful of while leveraging all these tools and technology to making sure that it's not defeating its purpose.
sure. So then when you're going to market as a startup or you're in a business and you're seeking to scale, like you have to pay attention to this and every single aspect of your tech stack.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So then let's dig into that. Let's talk about the go to market strategy and how people can scale. I think you have a slide here. Not all startups are the same.
Correct. Yep.
So tell me about when you're entering into an existing market, what should you be looking out for as you're building the AI into your systems?
Yes. So this is a very unconventional approach, right? Because if you go to online and you have read about that, hey, I'm starting my company, how should I go about it? The first thing they will tell you that, hey, you go and build MVP, right? Minimum viable product, do the outreach for the customers and try to validate your idea. And that is a very common, like advice what I've seen on internet. But one thing we have to keep in mind is that not all the startups are created equally, right? So depending on which category you fall, like this is a high level, you can divide any of the startups fall into one or two categories. Depending on in which category you fall, right, you require completely different strategy. So you need to see that, hey, whether you are entering into the market with a new product and trying to create completely new market versus trying to enter into the existing market, right, or just trying to be a low cost alternative of the existing product and service, or you just want to like a problem, address the specific problem and try to be just a niche, right, for this particular product. And depending on in which category you fall, you require completely different go-to marketing strategy. If you go back to the next slide, Anki. So I have two examples here, right? ChatGPT versus Zoom. Now imagine this, both of these company has used the same go-to marketing strategy where they will land, right? If somebody is coming up with a ChatGPT, let's take the example of it, right? That all the efforts initially when they roll out, it goes into, hey, what is available out there, right? How can I write a prompt? What is a token? How much it is going to cost, right? What is my limitation, right? What questions I can answer? Can it process audio, video, right? So a lot of the GTM went into not only just about building the awareness, but also educating the users how they can use this new product, which nobody has seen it, nobody has used it before, right? Versus somebody trying to compete with a Zoom and they use the same strategy, put a lot of efforts educating the users about, hey, what is the importance of having a audio video platform, how to use it, right? How it can, increase your productivity, right? So you see, both product and the platform require complete different strategy. If you're trying to compete with a Zoom, the you need completely different strategy than educating users about how to use some kind of audio video platform. Okay,
Mhm.
then you will be how you are trying to differentiate, right, from the Zoom, how you're either in terms of better in terms of performance, either the cost or the overall user experience or the products and the features, right? So that require different strategy versus what the chat GPT has leveraged initially. So this is how I would say that you identify what kind of startup you are, right? And
Mhm.
based on it, you come up with your own GTM strategy, which apply to your particular segment.
Mhm. I can see like ChatGPT has been putting out these open AI classes. When you log into like you have Zoom, you get the emails that'll tell you, hey, go look at this new feature. But I haven't gotten so many emails from ChatGPT to tell me that there's so much that I could be doing that doesn't require me to prompt it. Right. The most that I've learned about ChatGPT is because I'm prompting ChatGPT, which means I'm
Mhm.
using resources on ChatGPT. So are you saying that it would be great if they were to do like more classes like the open AI? Would that help us with the education aspect?
Yes. So open, see, with the chat GPT, again, that you are more fallen to the consumer side, right? But if I take the organizational perspective or somebody who's building the product based on ChatGPT, they
Hmm.
need to understand all the nuances around it, right? The performance, the cost, how the API key works, and all the technicalities built into it, right? So also, you see, every time the new models come up, you see, hey, O4, O3, all the new models coming up, right? Especially on the enterprise side, you need to understand, hey, what has changed, right, between the model A and model B. I see a lot of users are complaining that initially they build a product for, let's say, the model O3, and when the new model come up like O4, and without doing even the proper assessment or testing it, they just upgraded the model, and now the outcome is completely different.
When you were talking about upgrading, so you
Yeah,
have to be ready to be able to swap out that code
yep,
because now the system is upgraded. Okay, that's what you
correct.
meant by that. Okay.
Yes. So you have to understand that what has changed, right? Because these models are also evolving. Okay. And then instead of just a straight going and upgrading on the model, you need to do a lot of testing and validate that the prompt which you have written, the same prompt applicable is applied to the newer model and is
Mhm.
producing the consistent result. Because the last thing you want is to build an entire application for one version, and your customers are all of a sudden, when you make an upgrade in the backend, and your customers start getting that completely different result what they used to get, right? That's the last thing you want. So that's why it's important to understand that, how these models are changing, what is being changed, right? And then do the proper testing, right, before rolling out to the larger audience.
So the tech teams need to be really aware of what's to come and everything that they're building. They need to be thinking about these things. So
Correct.
yeah, you mentioned me as a consumer, but
Mhm.
I'm a boutique founder, right?
Uh-huh.
But those that are on the larger size, like they need to have their entire tech team ready. They need to be able to deploy. They need to stay aware on the top regulations. And I'm hoping that a part of this you're going to tell us where we can be able to find that information, how we can stay on top of it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. If you go back to the next slide. So this is more about, now we are switching the gear a little bit, and we are saying that, okay, in this new era, right, what kind of GTM strategy you can use to reach out to your customer. And I've been doing a lot of research and primarily working for my own startup in the last 6 7 months. What I learned is that most buyers, they are aware, right? They are educated. They have some prior knowledge about your product or the service. So never approach your buyer based on assumption that they do not know about the product and service you're trying to sell, right? Because everybody's on a social media. If you go back to the next slide, that they are consuming, right? So what I'm saying is that, because we all consume information, right? In one form, either from the TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google, ChatGPT, some of the traditional media. So the buyers are aware of it, what is going on in the market, right? One of the case study I hear is that just a TikTok has 170 million active users, which is like one in every two American has an account on TikTok. Okay, LinkedIn has over a billion users. So you see that what the platform you are going to use to reach out to user, that's also very important. So you have to respect the boundaries, and then the kind of domain of the platform, and based on it you can employ your go to marketing strategy. So this is a very important slide here. A lot of case study has been written about the crossing the chasm, and what it's there's a lot of studies and the data which kind of supports the hypothesis on that you can divide all the audience into five different buckets. Okay, from innovator, early adopter, early majority, late majority, and laggard. And you can see there is a correlation between how the technology, how the users adopt the technology, and the standard deviation. Okay, so you might notice that probably the Google has rolled out the glasses, right? Amazon has also released their Fire Phone and whatnot. So initially, when these new products roll out, a lot of momentum around it, right? And all those are the early adopters or the innovators who love, like buying the product and trying out the new thing. But that does not necessarily translate into the early majority, right? Doesn't translate into the full adoption, what they call it, into the product market fit. So there is a gap, right, between early adopters and early majority, and then in between these two phases, you need to find your chasm, and you need to put your efforts to cross the chasm, right? Because in initial adoption of your product and service, might give you a wrong signal about that, hey, there are a lot of people who are excited about using your product, and you might fall into the trap of the like false positive, where you see that, hey, because of the adoption, you see that there's a large market out there who are willing to try or buy your product. So that's why it's important to know that where your product currently fall into the spectrum, right? But all your adopters, are they just innovators, early adopters, fall into the majority of the users?
This is wild. I mean, this is really, it's a good picture of what it looks like in our day. Like, I want it now, and I don't care what it looks like. And then there's the like, okay, I want it, but I want everything to work, and I want it to work perfectly, and I want to be in compliance, and I want to be secure.
And this is very important for you to know that, hey, who is adopting your product, right?
Hmm.
So once you start identifying that who are your users, and then you put them into this the curve, and you will start slowly, gradually, the pattern will emerge, and you will identify that, hey, where your user is fall into in which bucket.
So as you're going to market, you're thinking about AI, you're thinking about how to integrate it into your system, but you're also thinking about where your buyers are. And you may not have to have so much going on, but as you do, you need to think about the compliance for each one. So that's where we're meeting the buyer where they are as we're building our MVP.
Correct. And I have identified that these five patterns, five team avenues where you can leverage into the new AI era. So the old channel like SEO, paid marketing, cold outreach, that's not going to work. Okay. But instead, you see all these social media celebrities, they were able to build their individual brands. Okay. So you make sure that you are leveraging the new platform like TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Discord in order to bring your brand awareness. Okay.
Hmm.
You can, if you are building the product, let's say some sort of e-commerce platform which leverages some form of AI, instead of going to the traditional route of SEO and marketing, you can go to social media platform, identify who are like a most influence in this particular domain, and collaborate, right? I see that's how a lot of company I'm a big fan of, they make hoodies and the jackets. They were able to scale the business like 100x by only leveraging the one platform, TikTok. That's it. You will never find their ad on in any other platform except the TikTok. And what I'm saying is, like, every other influence out there, they have collaborated with it. So, and just leveraging the one platform, they are able to scale like 100 million ARR pretty easily. Okay.
Sometimes it's simple. Sometimes it's much more simple. We don't have to be on every single platform. You just do
Correct.
the one that works for it and then focus on that one. And then you
Yeah.
can be really good at that one. Yeah. So your go to market strategy has to be
I,
very
I
streamlined, very.
I can tell you one thing, Nikki, that the last 6 months, what I realized that when I started, I was doing a lot of outreach on LinkedIn, and then it took me a while to realize that all these legal folks, they are not an active. They are not very active on LinkedIn.
Oh,
So I am wondering that, hey, I am reaching out to these folks. I know these people personally. How come they are not responding? And then I realized that they never logged in. I mean, it's been a 3 4 months they logged into LinkedIn. So you need to see that where these buyers are more active and what channel works for them, and
mhm.
and then double down on that particular channel.
Yeah. So then where are they? Are they on Twitter? Are they on Facebook? Where do they live?
Yeah, depends on who your target audience is, right? At least for the legal tech, I can tell you they does not live on LinkedIn for sure.
Where do they live? Are they on what is it? Alignable has become so popular. I'm getting all these emails for that one.
So go back to the previous slide, Nikki.
Okay.
Yeah. So for especially legal tech, what I notice is they are very risk averse, right? They are because the way the billing and the business model works, right? Instead of trying out the new product, they'll say, what, you go back fully bake the entire product. When you're ready, you come back to me, allow the session and start using. So if you're targeting to have some legal ops team to be early adopters,
Hmm.
then I would say you are going to have a lot of tough time. Another avenue, you can use a strategic partnership. So here's a classic example, like Netflix and AWS. They both compete with each other, right? In terms of like Prime offering of the Netflix.
Hmm.
Still, the entire infrastructure of the Netflix runs on AWS. So even sometimes you need to rely, even though if you are competing, your competitors, right? But you need to find a way to have some form of a partnership where you take the advantage of what they are offering. Okay. So you
Hmm.
need to see, hey, yes, I am competing with this company, but is there any way I can also leverage them for my own advantage?
Hmm.
trusted voice. Yes, if you are in the new, especially the legal tech and compliance, you have to become a trusted voice in your domain, because these people, they always rely on, like whose information is coming from, because the cost is very high, right? The consequence of, let's say, using the wrong product, it might get you into a big legal trouble, versus some engineering using just a product and have some product does not work. Like the last thing engineering can do is go back and roll back and say, you know what, it's okay, I can just go back and just roll off all the head. Also, the new search model. So that's another thing that Google has changed the entire the SEO model. So now, instead of just relying on the relevance on your website, they will look at the website and they will assess, and they will rank the higher website on most useful and relevant information. So instead of just having the keyword based approach, they will understand the entire full context around it. That's how you see the new Google AI models they are rolling out in USA. When you ask that question, right, it's not only just try to get to the answer of the question, but it will have a lot of data points, right? What is being asked earlier, who are you as a person, and build an entire profile. And based on it, whatever the website it's sources it's kind of find suitable, that will be going to bring a result from it. Okay, then that is completely new a business model for SEO, right? Because now nobody's just going to these blue links, and there's no way for them to also capitalize. So that is an entire tectonic shift in this entire SEO community. Also, what I see is that building a community from the startup, right? That's really paid off in a long way, because now you have all the like-minded people are coming together, you're using the product, and you are getting constantly feedback, and based on the feedback you can iterate, right? You can change the direction that and then course of action. Next slide, please.
I'll jump in before you go to this next slide. As far as a go to market strategy, we're on LinkedIn right now, and LinkedIn is an excellent platform. But you see people saying that SEO is dead because AI is taken over. But it's like, no, SEO is probably dead for your industry, for your ICP. But that doesn't mean that it's dead for everyone. So those of you that are on here, like LinkedIn's important, Facebook's important, Twitter's important, SEO is important, your community is important. If it's your ICP, if that's where your ICP is, you still have to pay attention to that as you build your go to market strategy.
Correct. And also I'd say that, employ the new tool, like I was just showing the clayandapollo.com, because what I notice is that now this blanket approach for the outreach is not going to work. And that's where these new platforms shine, where it will help you to identify what is being changed in your buyer, right? What has changed, whether the person has joined the new job, got the promotion, right? And personalize the individual message.
Right.
So this is where I would suggest that try to employ these new tool and understand it, how it works, and then you can use them as your own advantage, right? Somebody is getting the just a standard email like, hey, hello, blah blah blah, versus somebody contextualize, understand that he, what exactly you're going. You like somebody's post, or you publish a new article, and that is something resonant with you. Imagine somebody is personalizing the message, right, versus having the just a blanket templatized email, which will have a more impact.
Right.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that we need to be careful as marketing our own companies, that we need to be right where they are and then test all of it, right? So using those two platforms you've given to us right there, we need to test them before we give up on any one particular platform. So we're over the hour. Why don't you give me some key takeaways that you've put together for us?
So, in a nutshell, the takeaway would be that watch out for the new rules and regulation, right? Especially if you are building your startup into tech and the compliance space. Along with it, as I said earlier, that assume your buyer is aware of all the product and services available in the market out there. Okay, do not rely on your tech stack as a mode, because with ChatGPT and so many new tools are coming up, anybody can just replicate what you have built in literally like a week. Okay, but having the solid GTM and building the brand awareness, building your own brand can serve as your mode. Be it by where they are and what are the platforms they are most active in, right? And then make sure, at least in my experience, what I notice is that it doesn't matter how much company claims that one agent has replaced like 5 salespeople. That's not the what I have experienced, right? In my experience, people always buy from the people than the agent, because that's where the most trust come from. Okay, so come up, design your strategy based on your own learning, and being mindful of in what category your startup falls, right? And do not get trapped into of that, hey, just go out. There's the standard advice which everybody's talk about on the internet.
Right. People are buying from humans. At the end of the day, they want to have someone that they're talking to. They're not going to just buy from the computer, and they want to have that education. That I think people probably push zero for the longest time, right? I don't want to talk to an agent. I want to talk to a human. And the same
Yep,
thing with the chatbot. There's only so much you can get out of the chatbot, especially when they're doing such a good job of regulations, right? Nope, I'm not going to answer that. Nope, I'm not going to answer that. Well, fine, just give me a human.
absolutely, Nikki. You touch a very important point because see, when I'm making some call, right? Yes, agent will be able to answer my standard question, but agent will never be able to sense the emotions, right? If I'm
Mhm.
like your modulation of the voice.
So we got into the scariness of the wolf that can be able to bite if we're not looking out for the compliance of AI. We've talked about going to market and thinking about our tech stack and all the different elements of it. So I want to give you an opportunity to give a plug. Tell me about Kintron AI and how they address these situations.
Yes. So what we are building is an e-discovery and compliance platform, especially targeted for the law firms, legal service providers, and the financial banks. With this new AI, what the problem we are trying to solve is that not only just help the organization to protect from the existing compliance requirement, like SEC has a record keeping requirement for internal and external audit, but we are also going one step ahead and try to identify all these challenges which I just mentioned about the defect media detections, identifying and flagging all the AI generated content, and safeguarding the businesses and financial organizations to stay ahead of the curve of legal compliance.
Mhm. So we have legal, we have financial things to worry about, we have our security to worry about, and we have our reputation to worry about. And your company is solving for these.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you so
anybody is
much.
looking for legal e-discovery and compliance solution, they know where to find me.
Yes. And we'll be singing your praises because this is the first time that I've had this kind of conversation. So believe me, I'll be telling everyone, look, if you're looking for compliance for AI, reach out to Stitch and we will definitely get you connected with the right information. Any last words that you want to say before we close today?
Yes. So stay vigilant and stay always watch out on monitor it what is changing in the legal and compliance space because this is like moving target,
Yeah.
I would say.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today live with Top Voices Unite. We'll meet again on Thursday. If you look for Saturday, we'll have a newsletter that'll summarize the points of this. But if you have questions, please reach out. He will help you. He will connect you with the right resources. And in the comments after the show, he'll put some of the websites and the things that you can be looking out for so that you, as a founder or as a corporate executive, can comply with AI as it develops. You can be secure and you can save on cost and the reputation that you might lose. All right. You guys have a great day. Have a happy Thursday, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Nikki.
You're welcome. Bye.